to order at 6:04. Okay, so let's go ahead and do a attendance here. I'll go ahead and call out names, I guess. Alderman Van Buskirk.
Here.
Alderman Myers.
Here.
Alderman Green's here. Alderwoman Mims. Yes. Alderman Hunt. Okay. Mr. Hunt happens to be absent. Maybe we'll see him later. Oh, thank you. Okay. So, before we get started here, can I get a motion for the approval of the January 8th minutes?
So moved to approve the January 8, 2019 minutes.
Second.
All right. Thank you both. Okay, we'll take a vote on that, starting with Alderwoman Mims.
Aye.
Alderman Myers.
Yes.
Alderman Van Buskirk.
Abstain.
Alderman Green votes yes. Okay. So
I got you.
passes. Thank you. All right. So the first discussion item, we'll be looking at the upcoming budget review for the courts. Judge, thank you for being here. By the way, happy recent birthday. Yeah, so at any rate, I'm a kind of, you're very, very welcome. I'm going to open up the discussion for you. I would do ask that if any of my fellow aldermen wish to comment, just hit your green button as always, and I will make sure we get a chance to speak. Thanks.
So basically, the court's budget has been reduced, and the reduction in that has been due to the employment situation. We only have 2 full-time employees right now, court administrator, and then myself as the municipal judge. So when the last employee left and transferred to another department within the city, that position wasn't filled at the time because the needs of the court did not meet the needs to fill that position. So we had given up that position for now due to some of the things that had gone on in the city with, less work at the time. However, the workflow is beginning to pick up. So that is something that we might have to look at in the future of adding that position back in, or at least our part-time position. But as of right now, we have not included that in this year's budget. We're kind of waiting to see how things go over the course of the next fiscal year before we make any other decisions on that, which, of course, that is the bulk. The employment is the bulk of our budget for the court. And then the other things we need, which is anything you would need to run an office, the office supplies, postage, and things of that nature. We have requested in this year's budget a new copier because our copier is very old, and we're told that it's so old that they can no longer even get parts for it to fix it. So we are going to have to purchase a new copier. So we did add that into our equipment cost. That's why that cost is more than it was last year, because we do have to replace that copier in our office. So other than that, I mean, it's just your general, training and education we do every year so the court clerks can keep their certifications. And I, of course, have to go as the judge to keep my continuing education for the judiciary, and then all the dues that are associated with, the various agencies that we belong to, like the court clerks belong to MACA, which is the the clerks association, and then I belong to the Municipal Judges Association. So then we have dues for those associations. But other than that, there's not much that's changed over the course of the last year.
Well, thank you for updating us on the FTE situation. Seems like every year, at least I've been here, this is kind of the simplest department. Does anybody have any questions?
Yes.
Oh, no. Okay, Alderman Myers.
Judge, so this is an overall reduction of about $41,000 and change. Every year that I've been elected, I know that with this year, there's a cut. Last year was a cut. Year before that was a cut. Is this sustainable? I mean, I guess on a scale of 1 to 10, how bare bones are you right now?
We are pretty much bare bones. I mean, like I said, the bulk of our budget is in the employee salaries and benefits. I mean, everything other than that is just stuff you would need to run an office, and there's nothing,
Gotcha.
unless we don't, send out as many, warrant letters or show cause letters or something like that in postage, but we have to budget as if we are going to send that out because we never know,
And
of course, how many people are going to show or not show for a docket. So
right. And you said the workflow is keeping up with everything so far
Yes, it
with
is.
the possibility of
It's-
adding in later?
Yes, it has been increasing over the course of the last 4 months.
Okay,
It has been increasing.
that's all I got.
Alderwoman Mims?
I know you're doing a great job, Your Honor. I got one question where it says civilian employees overtime. Is that your police services that has to be in here?
There's services for, the officers that do the court, and then there's overtime for the employees that do court at night.
At night court?
Yes.
Do you see an increase as far as, because I know I sat in a couple of your courtrooms and it's packed in here, so do you see an increase in your needs?
I see that as the last 4 months, we've seen that the tickets have increased, so if that continues to go down that path, I think, we will continue perhaps to maybe have some additional overtime. But as you know, when they write tickets now, those don't show up on a docket for several months. So it's hard to predict, what the impact is that going to be. I think we just have to probably watch it over the course of the next 12 months to make a determination on that.
And also, I guess I wanted to say to you, just to be cognizant and look and watch, because with the meeting that was held last week on the rental piece, yes. And so I just want you to be able to just kind of look at that and take notes about that, because I was looking at it over in KC, and that judge is not playing with nobody. So you're ever so kind. But,
well, thank you.
well, on my way here, I was like, I wasn't sure I was going to be kind when I got here. I got hit. So
Oh, no,
it's
I'm
okay.
sorry to hear
It's
that.
okay. That's insurance, honey, insurance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Ms. Van Busker? Okay. I have a quick question.
Yes.
So in regards to the FTE situation, and Ms. Mims brought up the fact that obviously, if some of these rental regulations and other things end up going through, or if we're able to do more traffic stops and things like that, which my understanding is we are at this point. I'm sure obviously there's a process for communicating that with our city administrator, but in terms of requesting those additional funds for additional resources for the overtime at court for the FTE position, so that request would just be made. I'm just clarifying this, as earlier you said, just throughout the course later in the year,
Yes,
depending on that need.
if it became a situation where we had to add an employee or we were running out of our overtime, then I would have to come back to the council and present that to you,
Yeah.
to the full council, and ask for additional funding for those
Within the
things.
budget, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, and I just figured that conversation obviously would take place prior to that, but anyway, that's obviously a possibility, a very strong possibility when considering this, so.
Right.
All right, well, if no one else has any other questions, we'll just go and move on to the next item on the agenda.
All right, thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, so, our finance director, hello, Mr. Petrie, how are you?
I'm
Looks like
doing
you.
okay.
Oh, I didn't notice that there. Looks like you.
Yeah, I have a good break on my arm.
My kid just got her cast off like a week ago, and now I'm sorry to see that. At any rate, we had a conversation previously about a proposed grant policy. I'm interested in hearing what you're having to say, so the floor is yours.
Okay. What you have in front of you is a very thorough grant policy, and I researched it through GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association, and actually found a copy that was similar to this in Roanoke County, Virginia. It's a very complex document, but it also covers all of the ground. It's been legally tested and reviewed. Basically, what it has is, if you look in Section 3, it starts out with a central responsibility, and it says that the Board of Aldermen authorizes the finance director to promulgate any procedures and controls that minimize the risk for the city with grant requirements. And I know that's sometimes a daunting thought. And you know, I have a lot of experience in grants in my past. I have personally managed about 60 grants myself, and I've also been with an organization that had over 100 grants, and I was over that whole department. So I'm very familiar with how grants work, how the responsibilities, how the reporting goes, how the audits go with that. And I have yet to have a negative remark on a grant audit ever. So, you know, I would leave you with that thought there. Basically, it goes on in Section 4 with the grant application process. Basically, the department that wants to apply for the grant would submit a copy of the grant to the accounting department so the accounting department can review it. And there are limits to these. So if the grant is over $15,000, which there is language in this document that correlates with the purchasing policy. So currently, the purchasing policy says anything that $15,000 or over has to go to the Board of Aldermen for approval. Similarly, any grant that would be over $15,000 would have the same requirement. Anything under that would have to go through the city administrator and also the finance department for review. And the department that is going to be receiving the grant would actually be keeping the records of what they are doing with the grant. That would be, there's usually two types of reporting with each grant. There's the financial reporting that says how much money did you get, how much money did you spend. That resides in the finance department and the finance department only. There's also a program reporting requirement with most grants. And the program is really what did you do with the funds? What did you expend? How did your program go? What did you see out of the program? Those types of things. And that would reside in the department that's receiving the grant because they're pretty much over that section. So there are usually two folders with each grant. So you have the program reporting folder and you also have the finance one. They reside in two different places. When the grant is closed, they are all turned in together and filed as one document. So the finance department would be in charge of making sure that all of the reporting is done on each grant and is completed properly and that all audits are completed properly. And I have learned in the process that you never close a grant until you actually receive notice from the grantor that it is closed. And there's a lot of organizations that have learned the hard way on that. This document covers all of this. There's many pages to it, and it goes in very in-depth detail on how that works. But that's it in a nutshell. Everything's reviewed by the finance department, regardless of what size grant it is. When it goes over a certain amount, the city administrator has to sign off on it as well and approve it. And then if it goes over $15,000, then it goes to the Board of Aldermen for approval. So that's what this document states. It's a policy. It's also a procedure document that tells you how things are going to be handled as well. So it's a pretty complete package.
Thank you for summarizing that. I wanted to clarify something with you. So we had a conversation about this previously about the threshold if under that. So for instance, the city takes a $14,000 grant. It won't come to the Board of Aldermen.
It won't. It would be very responsible of us to report it to you.
That's where I'm kind of getting at in this conversation because, you know, grants of all sizes sometimes have strings attached.
Absolutely.
And I guess the concern I had, which wasn't, I'm not saying it's a big concern, but it's something you think about, is that if there was a grant that the staff accepted that did have some type of strings that was under that threshold, that it could get us binding to something, and I think the board would obviously feel at a loss with that, so.
Sure. You know, and my answer to that is I have a lot of experience in reading contracts and also grant contracts especially, and I know what strings are. I know how to spot them throughout the contracts, and I would personally never recommend a grant that would put a negative restriction on the city in any way. There are some restrictions that are good. Of course, you know, if you get money for radios, you need to spend it on radio. That's a restriction. But if it involves a longer term restriction or a permanent restriction, then that would be something I would red flag immediately.
Okay. Alderwoman Mims.
Of course, I want to say thank you, Russ, because I have experienced your work for about 6 years. I just want you all to know that. That's my video piece. What I like is the consistency of all the grants, and you would know what's coming in and what's going out and be responsible for it, which to me, that's the check and balances piece, which I know that's what you do. And I'm pleased because, you know, when you have this department and this one doing something, that one, but if it's all centrally located. So I just want to say to the staff and to you, thank you for bringing it all together, and which is updating City Hall. I think you answered me on this one, because everything would come to you and go out, and then everything under would go to the city administrator. But the two of you, and is it possible for like a brief update on any of them? So that, because you know how everybody wants to play off on somebody else or tell on somebody, just a brief update to us to say, this is what we got, this is what it's for, and that pretty much covers it.
Absolutely. You know, and I'll revert to some other experience that I have with boards. I'm chairman of the board of Mazuma Credit Union, which is a $750 million organization. And what we get every month is a president's report similar to what you get from the city administrator here. And it includes things like, hey, we applied for these grants this month, or we spent this money on these things this month, and this is what it brought to us by doing that. And so
This is thorough.
I would expect
Thank
that you would get something from the city administrator or myself on those.
And I echo a little bit from Alderwoman Mims, is that having this consistent policy in place is something that, it's like a modernization of some of these concerns and some of these issues. So, does any of my other fellow aldermen have any other comments? So I'd just like to make a motion to move this towards the board as a whole. All right. So Alderwoman Mims the first, and Alderman Myers with the second, and Ms. Mims has been nice enough to do the minutes of this meeting, so I will go ahead and call a vote here. Alderwoman Mims.
Yes.
Alderman Myers.
Yes.
Alderwoman Van Buskirk.
Yes.
And I will vote yes as well. Okay, very good. Thank you for your time, sir. All right.
See if that's what you want.
Let's see here. Yeah, I moved to the full board, yeah. That one's, we just look at it and it's going to go to budget.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so last item on the agenda is going to be the budget review for the Parks Department. Mr. Turner, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much.
So we'll go ahead and let you have your opportunity to go ahead and start this conversation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. The budget is quite a bit bigger. This year for the Parks Department, it was a goal of the Board of Aldermen to dip into reserves with our department specifically. The majority of that, just the whopping number that is raised, Carnegie Tennis Courts, that is projected to be a $310,000 project. That would be on the condition that we do get a grant with that. It would be a 40% matching grant. So if we get the grant, that would be $124,000 Land Water Conservation Fund grant that would also help us complete that project. That they're in very bad state, and so that they definitely need attention. Our other project is metal siding on our building. That's a 39-year-old building, and we do need to have the siding redone on that. And then there are some, a park improvement committee that we did put some money there for safety reasons, just to make sure that we can address some of the problems that that committee identifies. Otherwise, the budget is fairly close to as it has been in years past. We do have some maintenance on our athletic fields. That one is raised a little bit. We have some park structures, shelter houses that need some maintenance. We raised that a little bit. And then actually on personnel, part-time employees, that number was raised some. In 2023, I believe it is, Missouri is mandating that the minimum wage go up to $12 an hour. And our efforts to stay ahead of that and to have people dedicated to our jobs and showing up and not leaving us just flat, we went ahead and raised our minimum wage or our lower wage for our part-time jobs to $12 in this coming year budget. Other than that, mostly it is just maintenance and regular mowing contracts, trash service. If anybody has any questions.
All right, yeah, I got a quick one here. Well, two quick ones, and then I'm gonna call and have the fellow aldermen, I'm sure they want to speak. When will you know about the grant for the tennis courts at Carnegie? When will because you said that was a matching 40%?
It's 40% matching, and that is in February, is when it is due. We would find out in April whether we got the grant or not, and then we would have to bid out and start the project.
So you'll find out in April next year, and so this is, okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is the estimated coverage of that grants, would you say
124,000 is what it would be if that $310,000 project is the complete project.
And we won't know till April next year.
That's the grant cycle. It is due in February, and then again, after about 6 weeks, we would find out.
So are you, hypothetically, if you don't get that grant, are you planning on, is it still in motion to get those tennis courts done?
It is in the revenue side, that $124,000. That would be a park board decision. I don't know if they would go ahead with it without that 40%. I mean, that's a huge number.
I was just trying to run through my head if next April, if we're having to deal with a situation where we're trying to request additional funds, or, again, I'm not trying to say that you won't get it. I don't know, but I'm always kind of thinking on the side like that, though, just in case.
No, in working with Russ, I did put in the 60% number in the budget originally, and talking with Russ, he said, no, if you're going to spend that full amount, whether you get the grant or not, that full amount needs to be in expenses, so that is the full amount that is in there for the project.
Okay, that makes better sense, because I just, all right, because I was kind of hate leaving some things up in the air. Okay, that makes good sense. Thank you. The second quick question I had, and I may have figured out the answer, is the elections. So under elections, there's nothing listed.
Correct.
We budgeted for that this fiscal year.
That's true.
So am I just assuming correctly if that's the case, then that's just going to be transferred over to, that money just be transferred over to this next fiscal year?
No, it is November 5th, I believe is the election date, where we'll be going for the Parks 1/8 cent renewal. And I have been told that will
pay for that be prior to the fiscal year.
Prior to the actual election.
Okay.
So that should be all paid and done October 31st.
Yep. Okay. All right. Thank you. Alderman Myers.
Well, you took the majority of mine. Let's see, we did that one. Dave, how many phones do we have? There's a phone allowance of like $4,000 and change.
That goes to mostly to our employees. That's part of the city benefits package. We don't, we reimburse, I think it's $40, and we do have 9 employees.
Okay, because it ended up being like $300 and change a month or something.
Yeah, that's part of the salary package.
Gotcha.
Yeah, almost like a car allowance or something like that.
And then on contractual services, there's $8,000 spent on Super Splash. I know that last year's budget had the appraisal in it, so what's the $8,000 here for?
That's possible legal fees to help
Okay.
us navigate anything that may be coming up. Again, through working with Russ, had put that in a different part of the budget, and he said, no, that needs to be under contractual services if we need any legal help to achieve what we're trying to achieve.
And it's slightly off topic, but have you got the appraisal back, are
It
we
is,
gonna?
I called the guy today. I was expecting it here a week ago, and I still haven't got that. So
It's a typical appraiser. So yeah. Do you guys plan on trying to unload it next fiscal year, or?
Well, that's what we'd like to see. We actually have a meeting. Missy set up a meeting on Friday with somebody, a legal expert who specializes in this, and who will lay out more of our options. That's why we're wanting to have the appraisal ready. By following the grant obligations the way I understand it, whatever that appraises for is what we have to put into it for redevelopment. So if picking a number, it's say $500,000, we have to redevelop $500,000 of investment back into that property.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then last one was you cut the water budget in half. Are you going to start hooking a pump up to the Carnegie Pond for water? Or?
No, that's a good catch on that one. We have been paring that back ever since we closed the pool. Ever since the Super
Gotcha.
Splash was open,
Yeah.
that was at one time almost $20,000 because we were pumping 1 million gallons at a time, something like that. And so then we cut it back 8,000. And then this year cut it back another 5,000 because that was just a lot of water that we are no longer using.
Okay. That's all I got, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Van Buskirk.
Okay, I've got a couple questions. This is the first time I've ever looked at one of these, so bear with me if my questions sound kind of stupid. Auto allowance, is that for the trucks that I see down at the park picking up the trash or whatever?
No, that is actually my vehicle. Mike Conrad, who is held my old job, he does the sports and special events. He doesn't have a company truck. He uses his own vehicle when he's going to and from and hauling equipment for park activities. So I get one, Ron Fowler gets one, head of maintenance using his own truck, and then Mike Conrad, who does our special events and sports activities.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Down here under supplies and services, I guess this is for the BMX track, possibly. It says operating supplies. BMX, what kind of operating supplies? Is that to bring in a truckload of dirt or what?
It could be, but mostly that is a lot of concession equipment, concession sales, and then a lot of just their supplies. They use a track sealant that is pretty expensive. They spend about $4,000 to $5,000 to cover up the dirt so the rain won't penetrate in and cause a mess of their track where they have to do a lot more labor to get it back into a riding condition. That's what that number is. We did up even professional services on BMX quite a bit. We have another national race next year. We had to come back through finance and add money in twice in 2018 because of that national race. There was a huge expenditures associated with that. Now, they brought in quite a bit of funds, quite a bit of revenue with that, but the expenses also went up when you have higher revenue. So we anticipated that this year, that with that national race, there will be more expenses and operations and professional services, which is basically the National BMX organization, or where those fees go.
Okay. Down here under education and training, I see that you have an arborist. How many arborists are on staff, and are they on staff all year long?
We have one, and he is on staff all year long.
Okay. Next question, under repair and maintenance supplies. It says maintenance, more power equipment. I thought we
Contract out.
yeah, that's
Yes.
the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
So
We do, yes.
what's the 8,700 for?
Okay, that is still for all of our small engines. We do mow Coleman Park completely on our own because we do have two pretty decent-sized mowers, but that is the chainsaws, the weed eaters, the blowers, all the equipment that goes with that, all of our powered equipment that is small engine based is what that is. spending.
Okay. Okay, and my other one is rebuild a Ford tractor.
Yes.
What do you use the tractor for?
Okay, that is a brand new in 1982, and it has been dragging ball fields since that time. So it's one of those, it's an old diesel tractor. It's about a 24 horsepower, small size. The horsepower rating on that size of tractor is about the most expensive horsepower rating you can get. The smaller the tractor, the more you're paying per horsepower. So since it's a diesel tractor, we have had some hydraulic issues with that. It's not running real smooth. Instead of buying a new one for around $28,000, our guys are happy with the tractor that we have if we just refurbished it. So we're going to completely tear it apart, do an engine job, and do hydraulics on that Ford tractor.
On an average summer, how many fields do you drag?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I know you do the one at Coleman.
Yeah, we do the one at Coleman about 4 times a week, and then we do at least 5 or 6 other fields through the week.
What other fields do you do? Because Coleman is the one that I thought was most, I mean, they don't play at Carnegie anymore, do they?
Yeah, we still rent that one out, so we have to maintain it and drag that one out. We try to once a week if the weather permits, and then down at Little Blue Trace, there's 3 fields that we do drag also. Even when we are just renting out those fields, we do a minimum of once a week to try to drag those and get on those fields.
Okay. Okay, I think that's all I've got.
All righty. Did you get your question? All right. Oh, okay. Well, he had his light on, and he must have got it. So, Alderwoman Mims.
I just have one question. I'm glad to see you explaining it so everybody can understand what's going on with your budget.
Sure.
The one that I got, and I only have one. Park safety and security, $12,000. Do we have security in the parks? Or are we looking at putting security?
As you know, there is a park improvement committee that is having discussions right now. Alderman Walters is heading that up. We are anticipating that there are going to be changes and that I want to be ready for those changes, whatever those are. I did have a talk with Russ and Missy in finance. There's no way to know before that committee is final what those costs are going to be. I may be way low, I may be way high, but I do believe that there needs to be something there to address the security concerns that we have been having at Coleman Park.
Okay, and the other, well, I said I had one.
Sure.
I know, is it saying park or parks committee? Because when you say park, to me, you're talking one park. So I want to make sure we're being fair and consistent to all the parks. So you're starting with just one park, and then you're looking at what to do as you move on down the line, or?
I don't know how to say this. It seems to be focused most at Coleman Park, but we are looking at other parks as far as what we can do to enhance the public safety there. Part of our lighting project is throughout all of our park system.
Okay.
So that is a thing that we're going to do to try to make people feel more secure, make it a safer area, make it so people can see across distances what they're walking towards and things like that. So towards that end, we are looking at all the parks. I think the committee right now, because of the tragedy that happened at Coleman Park, has been focused more on that particular area.
I just don't want nobody coming back saying you're discriminating, you didn't look at their park and stuff. And the other part is the Wi-Fi, because
Yes.
I've been getting a lot of calls that saying they think we're wasting money putting Wi-Fi in the parks. What is the purpose of putting Wi-Fi in the parks?
Sure. Okay, that was in this budget year. The park board didn't move some money. They allowed us to spend up to $8,000 on that project. We've been looking at that. The intent of that was to have Wi-Fi at the shelter house at Coleman Park, Carnegie Park, and Kritzer Park. Now, we haven't spent any dollars yet on this. We've just been researching, calling contractors, internet providers. And that $8,000, it doesn't seem like it's going to go as far as we thought. So I was going to have to talk to the park board about that again. Wi-Fi with the younger generation is a very popular thing. It's our feeling in the parks that we're not going to fight that if that's very popular, and we want to have young kids in the park, young teenagers, 20-somethings out in the park, that we provide a service that would be attractive to them. The other thing that we can do with the Wi-Fi is that we could have wireless cameras that would also enhance security in those areas. And again, you just hook up Bluetooth-wise to the Wi-Fi that's there, and then you can start seeing what is actually going on at the park without monitoring it full time. There would be that camera there. So that would enhance what we're able to do, give us more freedom on trying to accomplish increasing safety at the same time as giving a service to the younger kids in town.
I just want to say thank you for looking at it, because the person that's heading that committee has been trying to do this for over 20 years, I hear. Okay, and then with you coming in new and looking at some of it. And the other part was, I know they were looking at gates. So I just want to make sure you're being cognizant of your budget as far as these items. And a couple of the pictures that were sent, I saw the ballpark where you have to have that up to stop the balls, but everybody's looking at it a little bit different. So I just want to say thank you, and I'm pleased. Thank you.
To follow up on one of the questions that Ms. Mims had, and you commented that you guys, about the use of wireless and why you need the Wi-Fi beyond entertainment purposes. You mentioned that you guys were exploring the possibility of wireless cameras. Can you expand on that just a little bit, like in terms of, is this something that's planned that you wish to do, or is it just something for consideration?
No, that is something that, for consideration with the Wi-Fi, and since these park security issues have been coming up, there's a couple other parks. Kritzer Park has come out of nowhere. We've had increased vandalism out there at our shelter house area, which has not been traditionally a place where we've received any vandalism. So that was one of those things where if we give something to the younger crowd to do, then we can also use that same tool, the Wi-Fi, for our own purposes to help increase safety or security at those locations.
You know, and I understand the practical approach for the cameras in terms of the Wi-Fi. I guess the concern I had, and I'm not a park board member, obviously, but, you know, obviously you want people using the parks. I guess the question I would have is, you know, it's funny you mentioned Krister Park, because I try to go there and run, I don't know, maybe 3-4 times a week, and, you know, do the outer loop, run like 3-4 miles there. And I've noticed like a lot of loitering. When I say loitering, I'm not talking about kids playing and stuff. I'm talking about messing around after school, but they're not enjoying the parks. They're sitting underneath the shelter house, hanging out.
Yes.
So it's funny because the 7 kids I kind of told to leave that were being, let's just say, using interesting language in front of my kid, and then we're also making out. I told them, you got to get out of here.
Right.
My issue, my concern is these folks are going to sit here and just be playing games on these, they're in the shelters, and no one can use the shelters because you got kids maybe loitering or not using things how they should be intended. I guess that's the concern on the other side, at least in my mind.
No, it definitely is. And the other thing is that, like this spring we had, I don't know if you noticed it or not, they built a fire on that, one of the picnic tables, the rubber-coated picnic tables there, and really harmed the surface of that picnic table. Could have been a dangerous situation if the fire got high enough. So we had some damage there, propping open bathroom doors that are on timers, that lock on timers so that they could go back after park curfew and get in there for whatever purposes that they're trying to do. So on those things, again, you give them Wi-Fi, but then you see what's going on maybe.
Well, no, I understand the Wi-Fi.
That's the trade-off.
The Wi-Fi, I mean, the Wi-Fi makes good sense if you guys are doing Wi-Fi cameras or not, and I really hope you're able to. I was just kind of wanting to expand upon that. I mean, it's just something I noticed that I'm afraid that, you know, if people want to rent those out, and I'm afraid that, you know, you may have some unintended consequences with that. I guess that's my concern.
Right,
So.
and we have checked on this, is that we can still have capability with our equipment and then turn off public Wi-Fi at curfew. At 11 o'clock, it would turn off.
Is that okay?
6 o'clock, it would come back on, and that should not interfere with anything that is previously allowed to stay on 24/7.
Yeah.
So that should be able to work out that way. Again, we haven't done that. We haven't dug the first shovel full of dirt on this project yet. You know, we're just searching to see what we can accomplish. Is that $8,000 enough? And just how this is going to play out. I'm still kind of looking at the value versus the payoff on this for the city.
Yep. All right, well, I appreciate expanding on that a little bit, and I don't see any other questions. I do not believe we need to make a motion on this, as this automatically will go to the Board of Aldermen, so that for their consideration, but I'd like to thank you for your time, sir. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, with that, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Alderwoman Mims first, can I get a second? Second. Alderwoman Van Buskirk with a second. Take a roll. Alderwoman Mims?
Yes.
Alderwoman Van Buskirk?
Yes.
Alderman Myers?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes as well. So, all right, we are adjourned. Thank you.